I have a rendezvous with death. We'll preserve the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
No fear. No political correctness. No wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA.
No fear, no political correctness, and no wokeism. You're listening to Underground USA. My name is Frank Salvato. You can find all we do at undergroundusa.com. Don't get me wrong, I'm ecstatic that we have re-elected Donald Trump to his rightful second term as President of the United States. But as a realist, a pragmatic realist, I understand that it will take more than 4 years of Trump 2.0 to damage and dismantle the Washingtonian Deep State and reform the federal government. The current expert-dominated federal bureaucracy, commonly referred to as the Deep State when you factor in K Street and the many special interest complexes, has been metastisizing for over 120 years. It first arrived on the American political scene with the Wilson administration and has been growing and encroaching on our individual and state rights ever since. That's why the recent move by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, in the wake of reports that a FEMA official allegedly directed employees to skip over the homes of Trump supporters while assessing damage from Hurricane Milton, is so incredibly important. This move could symbolize the first shot in a constitutional confrontation between an overreaching federal government and the states. As reported by a plethora of honest information outlets, including X and thegatewaypundit.com, a whistleblower has come forward with text messages that reveal FEMA official Marnie Washington ordered relief workers working in Florida to purposely skip over homes displaying Trump signs in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. According to thedailywire.com on X, whistleblowers say that relief workers were told it was best practice to pass over houses advertising Trump. The workers would enter into the system that they made no contact with the residents, blaming the directive, quote, Trump sign, no contact per leadership, unquote. In another post on X, one FEMA volunteer who was exposed to the directive stated,
I thought we could go help and make a difference. When we got there, we were told to discriminate against people. It's almost unbelievable to think that somebody in the federal government would think that's okay.
In the aftermath, FEMA Director Deanne Criswell, posting on X, called the all-but-admitted act irresponsible and said the employee had been fired and will be referred to the Office of Special Counsel. In response to this blatant discrimination by our federal government towards its citizens, DeSantis issued a terse but warranted statement and directive, quote, the blatant weaponization of government by partisan activists in the federal bureaucracy is yet another reason why the Biden-Harris administration is in its final days. At my direction, the Division of Emergency Management is launching an investigation into the federal government's targeted discrimination of Floridians who support Donald Trump. New leadership is on the way in D.C., and I'm optimistic that these partisan bureaucrats will be fired. Unquote. The key words to focus on here are these: launching an investigation into the federal governments. This marks a historic moment in time, and one held long in the waiting. For the first time in U.S. history, a state government, in this case the state of Florida, at the direction of its governor, is launching an investigation into the federal government that could end in criminal, civil, and constitutional consequences. With DeSantis' order for the Florida Division of Emergency Management to investigate Ms. Washington, the total effort of FEMA's actions in the state will be investigated. It's all but certain that any discriminatory and/or illegal actions taken by FEMA in the state will end up being referred to the state's Attorney General for actions, as this precedent has been set in the second Trump assassination attempt. Given the wide latitude established by recent federal investigations into private citizens and government officials alike, this would mean that Florida's Attorney General, Ashley Moody, would be able to look at not only Washington's actions and directives, but every aspect of FEMA operations in the state, including finances. So it must be asked, if criminal, civil, and constitutional malfeasance is discovered, prosecuted, and adjudicated, what would be the consequences? Criminally, we know fines and jail time would be in order. Civilly, we know that Floridians affected would have to be made whole. But what does it mean constitutionally? If, as reported by the whistleblower, FEMA supervisors were openly discriminating against people affected by Hurricane Milton in Florida, what kind of discrimination and agency slow-walking took place in northern Georgia, eastern Tennessee, and especially in western North Carolina in the aftermath of Hurricane Helene? Each of these locations voted heavily, if not overwhelmingly, for Trump in the 2024 general election. Are we to believe that in these rural areas, where people lost everything they've owned for generations, FEMA was on the up and up in their responses and aid? Are we really to believe that the Florida FEMA supervisor's directive about letting Trump voters suffer in the aftermath of Hurricane Milton was an isolated incident? Especially with the waterfall of first-hand reports from western North Carolina providing evidence that the FEMA response after Hurricane Helene was almost cruel in its malfeasance? As the country awakens to just how corrupt our federal government has become under the far-left extremism and tyranny of the Obama, Biden, Harris administrations, are we really supposed to believe that this kind of special interest, partisan, elitist governance is secluded to one agency as it applies its authority in one state? To believe that is the case would be so far beyond naive that I'm not even sure there's even a word or phrase to describe it. It is for this reason that DeSantis' action to investigate FEMA, and through that agency the federal government, serves as an opening salvo to a confrontation centered on the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment, which state respectively,
"The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
and
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively, or to the people."
DeSantis' move is the first move in a constitutional chess match between the states and the federal government that could pave the way for states to reassert their rightful authority over their constitutional domain and reestablish their rightful place as a potent check and balance to the federal government overreach through the 9th and 10th Amendments and use of the potent tool of nullification. The clear-eyed American understands that deep state elitist tyranny has become endemic in our federal government and lives in the bureaucratic apparatus, which has rendered representative government severely damaged, if not significantly hobbled. We see it in the actions of far-left extremists like U.S. Representative Jamie Raskin, opportunistic rhino Republicans like U.S. Senators Mitch McConnell and the newly elected Senate Majority Leader John Thune, the whole of the bought and paid for Uniparty, and pathetic groups like the Lincoln Project, whose leader said this:
Number one, Trump's going to lose. He's going to lose badly. He's going to be wrecked. I don't know what the electoral college count's going to be at the end of this, but it's going to get loud and it's going to get hard for him. Their panic is extraordinary. Their events in Georgia and North Carolina are basically about as well attended as a Pokemon card trading convention in ass crack, Alabama. This is a campaign in freefall. It's really, really fucked up. Donald Trump is now in the same position that he described Hillary Clinton in 2016. He's weak. He can't finish a sentence. He's sick. He's meandering. He's probably dying at this point. His party is splitting apart. Yes, you MAGAs, I know MAGAs, I know. You guys are so intense. You believe everything that he says, every word that comes out of his mouth. I get it that you believe that. But guess what? He's been lying to you all along about a lot of things, and you're about to realize it tomorrow. Now, I want to say something to you, Donald,
Rick.
and your little minions, and your whole enabling class of the sort of MAGA influencer class. Donald, if you try to steal this election tomorrow, and we know you're gonna try, I promise you one thing: you will die in prison alone. Your family will be broken. Every property you've ever owned will be taken from you. Your chance of dying in prison is going to go way up if you do what you think you're gonna get away with. It's not going to work this time. It's just not. You're going to be it's going to be very tough, Donald. I would be super careful if I were you. I think really hard about the fantasies some of these jackoffs around you are selling you.
Our federal government has been co-opted by the greedy, the opportunistic, the manipulative, and the egotistical. We see it in the actions of federal employees and agents working for the elitist tyrants, mostly appointed and placed at FEMA, in this example, the now politicized Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation, the decades-long partisanship of the Internal Revenue Service, and the dictatorial despotism of agencies like the National Institute for Health, the Food and Drug Administration, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Centers for Disease Control. Our nation's federal government has become an oblivious whore for the global elite and connected. We suffer from crony corporatism and public-private cooperative soft fascism. Our elected leaders most often have to answer to the federal government's bureaucracy when that flow of authority is, constitutionally, supposed to be in reverse. This is the cancer, the political cancer, that the American people gave a mandate to Donald Trump to extinguish. And while Donald Trump's second administration works diligently to cripple the deep state, it will be governors like Ron DeSantis, Kristi Noem, Kim Reynolds, and Greg Abbott, and the rest of the governors who stand to truly serve their peoples, to work to reestablish the constitutional balance between the federal government and the states. If we can keep the pressure on, an Alinsky rule that has served the neo-Marxist progressives well, and run interference against the deep state, and especially the uniparty establishment electeds masquerading as Republicans, if we can run interference against them as Trump, DeSantis, and the other governors move to return our republic to constitutionalism, we have a chance at surviving the neo-Trotskyism of the left. But make no mistake, it's going to take a lot longer than just 4 years. We must start playing a potent long game. When we come back, our segment on America's Third Watch, broadcast nationally from our flagship station, WGUL, AM 930 and FM 93.7 in Tampa, Florida.
You're listening to Underground USA.
Our federal government has been co-opted by the globalist sycophants of the deep state bureaucracy. At every turn, this bureaucracy expands its power over both the American people and the states in which they live. The framers knew corruptible men would one day bastardize their elected authorities and attempt to centralize government in Washington, D.C. That's why they gave us the 9th and 10th Amendments. That's why they left standing the tool of nullification. In his book, Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government, Frank Salvato lays out how states can claw back their constitutionally mandated powers from the overreach of the federal government, doing so in a manner that prevents a second bloody civil war. Get your copy of Nullification, The Case for Decentralizing the Federal Government. Available on Amazon.com in Kindle form and paperback.
News, insight, passion. AM 930, The Answer.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks again for coming on special here in the middle of the week. I really appreciate it. And I know everybody else really appreciates it. And so, Frank, what do you think? I mean, there's a lot happening. I mean, it's almost hard to know where to start with these cabinet picks. They're coming so quickly.
Well, I'm not surprised that they're coming quickly, because this time around he understands what the job entails. He's been here once before. The first time he and his people really didn't understand the process of what needs to be put into place when you're president-elect. This time he hit the ground running. I know exactly what I have to do. I'm sure he had some of these people in mind before he even had to sit down with his newly created transition team to figure out who they should be. The most exciting one is the Department of Government Efficiency.
Oh yeah, exactly.
That put a smile on my face when he said that it's going to be Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy that are going to report directly to him and work with the Office of Budget and Management to figure out how to downsize and decentralize the federal government. My heart grew 3 sizes that day.
Yeah, it is pretty cool, and it's actually, it's revolutionary at this point. I mean, to take on the federal government in that regard, that's the sacred cow for sure of the Democrats. I mean, you're now going after their thing here, and but it's good. I think it will be a good thing.
Well, it's even more than that. It's going after the deep state, and I was reading a Substack yesterday, and a point was brought up that's very, very relevant. We saw what happened to Donald Trump as a candidate when it came to his security. Now he's president-elect, and it gets bumped up a little bit. But when the agency that's supposed to be protecting the president-elect comes from the apparatus that he's trying to reform, he needs to be a little bit more careful than just going about it as the status quo. There's a real danger here for this man now, because he's openly committed to dismantling the deep state and reforming the machine. He wants to get it back to constitutionalism, and that is no easy task when a corrupt deep state is at the helm. They've done wicked things before, and you should truly believe that when it comes down to being extinguished, they will do truly wicked things again.
No. Yeah,
so
you're right about that.
We need to prepare ourselves. He needs to be extra cautious. He needs to be very cautious about who he hangs out with, how he travels, and where he exists between now and when he gets into the White House for security reasons. And we need to be prepared to see the most disgusting, despicable, wicked acts coming at this man between now and when he actually gets to walk through that door.
No, I think you're exactly right, because I mean, what you're describing, Frank, is pretty ominous, pretty scary, but it also is, these are the actual people who want to steal our democracy, to put it in those terms. They're the ones that say, nope, you're not going to change it. No, this is the way we do it, because that's our power base from their point of view.
Yeah, these are the people who've already stolen our representative government. They sold it to the highest bidder. That's why K Street real estate is so incredibly expensive. These are the people who influence elections, who influence world events, who actually put their thumb on the scale when the United States uses its military might. Put nothing by them. Don't think that, well, okay, the election, they lost. Now it's the sunrise is happening and it's all beautiful. We're driving into Toontown and the birds are singing. No, we're in a very dangerous moment of time, and the guy who's in the crosshairs is Donald Trump.
Well, Frank, you mentioned just a few moments ago, how gratifying it was to know that Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy were going to start taking a real stab here at the decentralization of the government and spending, this kind of thing. And that's really kind of what your book is all about. And that is, again, bringing the power, bringing the decisions, and bringing all the stuff that's not really the purview of the federal government back to the states.
Well, I come at it from a different angle. Mine was a last resort for governors and state legislatures to use. Mm-hmm. It's a tool. Nullification is a tool that governors and legislatures can use to override and jettison overreaching, unconstitutional federal mandates from the government. What Doge, and I think that's ironic, of course. Yeah. We should all think it's ironic. Doge is coming at it from a completely voluntary way. It's the federal government decentralizing itself, downsizing itself, getting it back to the machine that the federal government was supposed to be, so that there is no overreach. There is no wasteful spending. There is no Department of Education, as it were, where, we've got the reiteration of that promise after the election that, yes, in fact, Donald Trump does indeed intend to get rid of the Department of Education. Do you think they're going to go quietly? Not even close. The teachers' unions are going to be up in arms. And I hope the question rises out of that move. Why should the teachers' unions care if there's a department in Washington, D.C., unless they own it, lock, stock, and barrel? They're supposed to represent teachers, not the apparatus.
Right.
So why should they protest? But watch the protests come. And that's the deep state. That's the ungodly relationship between these private sector power entities and the government. And that's what Donald Trump and people like Elon Musk and Ramaswamy and the rest of the Trump appointees recognize. It's what Americans have been awakening up to and recognizing for quite a while. Federal government doesn't have any business doing this. You don't have any business saying, I have to do this, or you will do that, or you should give me your money for this. And it's time to get back to good. And that's why I said it's a very dangerous time, because he's taking the wrench and jamming it into the gears, and sometimes the gears bite back.
Yeah. It's like I said, this is very ominous stuff. And as well, Frank, we've got a couple of these, appointees now that Trump is putting up for these positions. For example, you have the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, who's a Fox News host, and of course, former military soldier from the U.S. Army. And then, of course, you've got Governor Kristi Noem from South Dakota heading to DHS. What are your? And there's some criticism. Well, they don't have these. They haven't been in these different positions before and so forth. But what is Trump getting at here, do you think?
Well, any criticism of Kristi Noem, I take with a grain of salt coming from disgruntled people in the machine. She's someone who is steadfast in her love of country,
right?
And she's coming from an executive experience, so she knows how to be an administrator. Hegseth, people are, they know him from Fox News, but the man has multiple decorations from wartime service. He's got 2 Bronze Stars. The guy understands what the military is all about. And as we've seen with the Biden administration, I mean, he was a surprise pick for me. I thought it was going to be somebody who had a little bit more executive experience when it came to the military, because believe he retired as a captain. But he's never left the sphere of helping the warrior. And when we look at the Biden administration, to get back to that, he had people who were 4 stars, and they failed miserably at just about everything because they took a knee to the ideology that the far left was saying that you have to embrace. I mean, drag queen shows on military bases, indoctrinating the kids in the military schools on the bases. That doesn't take somebody who has 4 stars to say that's wrong. It takes somebody who has common sense and who cares about our warriors and their families to say that's wrong. And I think that's where people should be placing that onus on that pick. He's someone who's coming from the warrior class instead of the administrative warrior class to say, this is not right. You people are ideological. You've risen through the ranks on theory and paper chase alone. We don't need that. We don't need the ideological element here at the Pentagon. The only ideology we have here is winning conflict and keeping America safe and maintaining the most powerful military on the face of the planet in human history. And I think he'd be a very good candidate for that. I'm pleased with the choice.
Well, exactly. And, again, I think this is all part of Trump. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, and that is when the terrible events in Butler occurred and Trump got up and he pumped his fist and said, fight, fight, fight. I think he realized that he needed to have this was a special sense of urgency because of obviously what was just unfolding at that very moment. But I think that's carried over to say, look, I'm not going to play this game anymore. I'm not going to just have your standard issue, cabinet secretary be installed into these positions. I think he really wants to shake things up.
Well, remember, when he went about taking the advice of the Washingtonian insiders last time, he got bit.
Oh, yeah.
He got bit, especially with Kelly. He got bit. And he is not a guy who usually makes the same mistake twice. So he said, no, I'm not doing the let's get the potentates from inside the Beltway together to see who should be placed and who's next in line crap. He said, if we're going to do this, I need people here who are of the same heart. The position I'm waiting to hear is the one for Tulsi Gabbard.
Yeah.
I have not heard her name floated for anything yet. So some people have prognosticated about the VA. She would be a good pick for that, but she is suspiciously missing so far.
Mm-hmm. No, you're exactly right about that. And she was, they talk about campaign for Donald Trump. I mean, she was all over the place for them.
Yeah. So that's why it's expected. If she does not end up anywhere in the Trump cabinet, I truly, truly hope it's because she doesn't want to deal with the Washingtonian BS and that she would rather be a casual advisor, but she certainly deserves a position. And that's for sure. And we need to hear the official announcement of what Robert F. Kennedy RFK is going to do, RFK Jr. That needs to be an official position for what he did for the Trump campaign. The two of them need to have at least be offered official positions to make a difference with what they did for that campaign and literally being on the ground floor at the creation of this new Republican Party, because that's where we are today, Kyle.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, this isn't the same old thing. And, Donald Trump has actually expanded the umbrella, the tent, whatever you want to call it. And you're right. See, this is not standard issue, just like I was saying.
Yeah, no. And we've heard the phrase big tent before. This is not expanding. This is reinventing. This is redefining what big tent is all about. We've given lip service to doing that. But this is the execution of that, and that means there's a wide swath of people and thinking. It's true diversity, and it's a beautiful thing.
Isn't it, though?
Underground USA.
Ticketmaster's parent company is going woke. They want you to forget about the ridiculous service and convenience fees they charge that nearly double ticket prices. Ticketmaster got caught hacking their competitor to keep customers from getting lower prices. And parent company CEO Michael Rapino laid off workers in droves while raking in millions. It's why Ticketmaster is one of the most hated companies in America. Michael Rapino. Ticketmaster. Serve your customers, not woke politicians.
They're funding abortions, demanding Americans comply with their woke climate agenda. They teach people that the U.S. is a system of white supremacy while stripping away your Second Amendment rights. A California Democrat? No. It's Bank of America under CEO Brian Moynihan. There's enough people pushing political agendas in America. Your bank shouldn't be one of them. Bank of America. Their lies start with their name.
If you like the podcast, please go over to undergroundusa.com and sign up for our Substack. It comes straight into your inbox with new podcasts and articles, everything we offer, circumventing the gatekeepers, the censors, and the fact-checkers. 3 useless groups of people whose only task is to keep information away from you. And please remember that the top Substacks are chosen for AI-generated search engines based on the number of likes and paid subscriber comments on the Substack. That shows engagement, not the ones with the most subscribers. Liking and commenting are ways to show your support for our work. And as the holidays approach, please remember to talk politics, religion, and current events with your family, friends, colleagues, and acquaintances. Do it politely, respectfully, use facts, and listen, because when we hear each other's concerns, we realize we have more in common than we do in difference. And at that moment, that's when the deep state gets hobbled. You're listening to Underground USA. No fear, no political correctness, and no wokeism. My name is Frank Salvato.